What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. This video is every WWE Women's Champion ranked from worst to best. This video was suggested by Christina Coleman, so thank you. If you guys have any suggestions, please put them in the comment section below or on my post on my channel, and let's get into it. This is going to be a long one. Almost 40 minutes.
The WWE Women's Division is currently the strongest it has ever been. Across Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, we often see match of the night contenders, high-profile rivalries, and in the case of WrestleMania 35 and Hell in a Cell 2016, pay-per-view main event title matches featuring the creme de la creme of WWE's fighting females. It hasn't always been this way, though. Years of diminished booking, people in management who simply didn't care, and skewed hiring practices meant that the WWE's women were an afterthought at best and practically irrelevant at worst. WWE's women's division dates back to 1984, when Vince McMahon was on the verge of completely rebuilding the wrestling industry in his image. Signing NWA Women's Champion the Fabulous Moolah and renaming the title the WWF Women's title, the long storied road to the Divas Revolution started. Times of highs and lows, relevancy and apathy, competition and exploitation, and several dissolvings of the division occurred from 1984 until the Divas Revolution began in 2015, but female performers have always been a vital cog in the WWE machine. Even in times of inactivity, the WWE Women's title was the high watermark for women's wrestling in America and saw 29 different champs hold the strap between 1984 and 2010, when it was unified with the Divas title and the title belt was retired in favor of that god-awful butterfly belt. So who was the best and who was the worst? There's only one way to find out. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic.com, and this is every WWE Women's Champion ranked from worst to best. Join us. Number 29, Harvey Whippleman. Harvey Whippleman in drag held the title for 2 days under the name Hervina, and that is all the time this entry is getting. Number 28, Velvet McIntyre. Although her ring name sounds like a fancy biscuit, Velvet McIntyre was one of the founders of the WWE Women's Division and the first in WWE history to hold the women's tag titles, having been an inaugural champion with Princess Victoria in 1984. After dropping the titles with new partner Desiree Peterson to the Glamour Girls, McIntyre switched to the singles division and waded right into a feud with never-ending women's champ the Fabulous Moolah, unsuccessfully challenging for the title at WrestleMania 2 during the Chicago portion of the event, the last time the belt would be defended at Mania until WrestleMania 10. McIntyre eventually defeated Moolah for the belt a few months later in Brisbane, Australia, as part of WWE's Australian tour, but lost it back to Moolah 6 days later in Sydney. And that was it. McIntyre soon slipped down the card, and aside from a match at the inaugural Survivor Series, did nothing of note before the women's division was scrapped in 1990, with McIntyre quietly leaving WWE around the same time. Number 27, Deborah. Deborah was great. We all loved Deborah. From her run in WCW, her time as Jeff Jarrett's valet, her inclusion in the Rock and Austin rivalry leading up to Mania X7. Okay, so great is a stretch, but she was a prominent figure in late 90s wrestling. As a valet. Imagine our shock then when we remembered that Deborah is a one-time WWE Women's Champion holding the title for 34 days no less. Deborah won the title by defeating Sable in an evening gown match on Raw is War in 1999. Even though she technically lost, Commissioner Shawn Michaels declared Deborah the winner because she was in her undies and HBK was a randy old sod. Yes, this was fun when we were 11, discovering things about our bodies and sprouting hair in really weird places, but looking back on it, this was symptomatic of everything wrong with WWE's women's division at the time. This isn't taking anything away from Deborah. She did what she was asked to do. It's just a shame that she was asked in the first place. Still, I bet Jerry Lawler loved it. Number 26, The Cat. Miss Kitty was brought into WWE in 1999 as Deborah's assistant, but in reality, Kitty was hired because husband Jerry Lawler wanted to be paid to gawp at her on TV. Although untrained in the ring, Kitty had a lot of natural charisma and became a fan favorite thanks to her work with China, as well as her love of getting naked. Again, this was the Attitude Era, and we were all young and horny. Miss Kitty took on Jacqueline, BB, and WWE Women's Champion Ivory in a four corners evening gown swimming pool match at Armageddon 99. The match went just over 2 minutes long and got an unprecedented 10-star rating from Lawler, unsurprisingly. Kitty won and celebrated by getting her zonkers out. An infamous moment, sure, but most don't actually remember that she won the title here. To many, the grand prize of women's wrestling was overshadowed by a pair of breasts. Anyway, Kitty became the cat, defended the title in other matches involving chocolate pudding and swimming pools, but lost the title to Harvey Whippleman in a Lumberjill Snow Bunny pool match, obviously. Number 25, Bertha Faye. Rhonda Singh was a destroyer. 5'8", 260 pounds, Singh held titles in All Japan Women, Stampede Wrestling, and Carlos Colon's WWC from the late 1970s to the early 90s under the name Monster Ripper. By the mid-90s, WWE were having another go at promoting women's wrestling and were building their division around Alundra Blaze and Bull Nakano when Singh was brought in to
What was the weirdest time in WWE?
add legitimacy and experience to the fledgling division.
Or WWF, WCW, or is it WCW?
So, WWE did away with everything that made her a star and turned her into bumbling comedy trailer park bruiser Bertha Faye, naturally. The on-screen girlfriend of the greatest women's champion ever, Harvey Whippleman, Bertha Faye launched straight into a feud with Blaze, breaking her nose on an episode of Raw in April '95. The two squared off for the title at SummerSlam, with Faye getting the decisive win with a sit-out powerbomb, the first women's title change on WWE pay-per-view since WrestleMania 1. Bertha held the title for over 50 days before dropping it back to Alundra Blaze. By this point, WWE had all but given up on their women's division, and Bertha, hating her gimmick and tired of WWE, asked for her release. Number 24, Candice Michelle. Candice Michelle, for many, was the poster child for the less than stellar era of WWE's women's division in the mid to late 2000s. A former Playboy model, Candice was part of the Diva Search in 2004, but failed to win. WWE signed Candice anyway, and she spent the first few years of her career competing in evening gown and bra and panties matches, and whatever the Playboy pillow fight was at WrestleMania 20.
In my opinion, this was the weirdest time.
To be
The Attitude Era.
fair to Candice, she could have half-assed her time in WWE, but she worked at her craft and improved in the ring, and in 2007 engaged in a feud with WWE Women's Champion Melina, all stemming from Michelle's past as a Skin Mag cover star. The two feuded on and off for the most part of the year and had many matches together, including a pudding match, which we assume was like the Great British Bake Off. Oh, hang on, no, it says here they fought in a literal paddling pool filled with pudding. That makes far more sense. Candice eventually defeated Melina for the title at Vengeance Night of Champions and went on to defend it against Beth Phoenix before the Glamazon took the title at No Mercy. Candice was released in 2009 but returned to Raw in 2019 for a literal 20-second run with the 24/7 title. Number 23, Gail Kim. A multi-time TNA Knockouts champion and arguably the greatest women's wrestler in the history of that company, Gail Kim is also a one-time WWE Women's Champion. Signing with WWE in late 2002, Kim won the title in her first televised match. Winning a battle royal for the vacant title on Raw in 2003, Kim then went on to have a 4-week run with the gold. However, she only managed one successful title defense against Molly Holly before losing it to the former Miss Madness on Raw. And that, unfortunately, was about it, really. In late 2004, Gail Kim was released by WWE, who allegedly told her they wanted to take the women's division in a new direction. When you consider just how good of a wrestler Gail Kim is, and realize that the next few years were defined by bra and panties and pudding matches, yeah, WWE were indeed true to their word. After kicking the TNA
Of course. Hold on. I can't pause. Oh my god.
Knockouts division off in
On my
2007,
recording software, I would be able to pause. I can't pause now.
Kim returned to WWE in 2008, where they once again did bugger all with her. Although she was Daniel Bryan's on-screen girlfriend for a bit. Remember that? Nor do I. Number 22, Leilani Kai. Part of the initial WWE women's wrestling explosion in the mid-80s, Leilani Kai has the distinction of being women's champion at the inaugural WrestleMania. Trained and managed by the fabulous Moolah, Kai was a dirty, vicious heel who was on a quest to avenge Moolah's loss against Wendy Richter. And avenge she did. Kai defeated women's champion Richter for the belt at the legendary War to Settle the Score in 1985, the event that set the wheels in motion for the Showcase of the Immortals. WrestleMania was a make-or-break event for WWE. WWE. Vince McMahon stacked his card with his best talents and celebrity guests, and the women's title match was no exception. The penultimate match of the evening, Kai, flanked by Moolah, defended her title against Richter, who was accompanied by Cyndi Lauper. The two went a little under 7 minutes, with Richter getting the win and the title to a monster pop. Kai then moved on to the women's tag scene, becoming a 2-time champion with Judy Martin before leaving the company in 1989. When WWE had a second crack at a women's division, Leilani Kai came back for one more run in 1994, challenging Alundra Blaze for the strap at WrestleMania 10 in a losing effort. Number 21, Layla. We all remember when Lay Cool were the co-holders of the women's title, but how many of you remember that technically it was only Layla who was the champ? Okay, a few of you, but it's not unfair to say that Layla was usually overshadowed by tag partner Michelle McCool. The first Diva Search winner to win the women's title, Layla defeated Beth Phoenix for the belt in a 2-on-1 handicap match with McCool on SmackDown in May 2010. Lay Cool declared that they were both the champion, complete with matching title belts, annoying SmackDown GM Teddy holla something about tag teams long. Layla still managed a successful defense against Kelly Kelly at Money in the Bank, but Long got firm with the team and ordered there only be one champion and one championship. So in a feat of sheer Herculean strength, Lay Cool ripped the title belt in half and kept a piece each as an ugly BFF charm. But McCool started to dominate the team, and when Lay Cool challenged Divas champion Melina to a title unification match, it was Mrs. Undertaker who took the match and won the title, despite not actually being women's champion. Layla was soon positioned as number 2 in the team, a shame seeing as she technically never lost her title. Number 20, Sable. Sable was one of the Attitude Era's biggest stars. A former valet of Hunter Hearst Helmsley and real-life husband Mark Merrow, Sable's popularity exploded due to her risque nature, which often led to Jerry Lawler drooling all over her, becoming one of the most over-performers in the entire company. During Sable's star-making battles with the former Johnny B. Bad, Jacqueline got involved on Merrow's side, and the feud transitioned into one for the newly reinstated women's title. Although Jacqueline won the belt via shenanigans, Sable stayed in the title picture and eventually won the gold at Survivor Series 98. The title went to Sable's head, and after her record-breaking Playboy cover came out, the second best wrestler to ever hit a Sable bomb went heel and barely defended her title in the process. After 6 months with the belt, Sable put it on the line against Deborah, winning an evening gown match on Raw in May 1999, but Commissioner Shawn Michaels gave the title to Deborah anyway because, as previously discussed, he was a randy old sod. It's alleged that Sable's storyline wasn't necessarily far from reality. Perhaps thinking she was bigger than the business, Sable was very unpopular in the locker room. Her unceremonious stripping of the belt stemmed from backstage politics, and Sable quit less than a month later. Number 19, Jacqueline. The pride of Tennessee, Jacqueline became the first woman to hold the reactivated women's title in 1998 during her feud with Sable. Jacqueline was a 10-year veteran, having had a brief earlier stint in WWE in the mid-90s, and in 1998 was the standout performer in a women's division mainly populated by non-wrestling eye candy. Sable needed someone credible to take the title from, and Jacqueline did what she could with the green as goose poo bombshell. A little over a year later, and Jacqueline found herself in the title picture once again, first as part of the Armageddon 4-way, you know, the one with Miss Kitty and the casual nudity, before beating Harvey goddamn Whippleman for the belt on SmackDown in February 2000. As champ, Jacqueline had a decent but short feud with Luna Vachon before colliding with the inventor of women's wrestling, Stephanie McMahon Helmsley. Flanked by D-Generation X, an absolutely terrified Steph got the win and the title thanks to interference from Tori. It was never going to end well, was it? Jacqueline later became the first woman to hold the Cruiserweight title in WWE and was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2016. Number 18, Jazz. Arguably the standout female wrestler in ECW, Jazz debuted in the WWE at the tail end of the Invasion, affiliated with Paul Heyman's Happy Hardcore Hooligans as part of the Alliance. Laser focused on the WWE Women's title, and despite a losing effort in a six-pack challenge for the title at Survivor Series 2001, Jazz soon became #1 contender to champion Trish Stratus. The two went back and forth for the best part of 3 months, with Trish winning their first major match at the Royal Rumble, and Jazz finally winning the title title 2 weeks later on Raw. A few months later, Jazz challenged Bubba Ray Dudley for his hardcore title, but an interfering Steven Richards would leave with the belt that night. Jazz and Richards soon started teaming against the weird team of Trish and Bubba Ray Dudley, culminating in a match for Jazz's women's title and Steven Richards' hardcore title. Trish got the win, and Jazz got a super nasty powerbomb through a table from Bubba, all while performing with a torn ACL. After time out recuperating, Jazz enjoyed a second run with the title a year later. And here's a little something for you. Jazz has the unique honor of holding the women's title as WWF became WWE, by default becoming the last WWF women's champion and the first WWE women's champion. Thank me later if that ever comes up in a pub quiz. Number 17, Stephanie McMahon Helmsley. The founder of women's wrestling, the goddess of the graps, Stephanie McMahon Helmsley is surprisingly only a one-time women's champion. All joking aside, Stephanie was an amazing cowardly heel champion, picking up the title during the Halcyon McMahon-Helmsley faction era in the year 2000. Flanked by WWE champion and husband Triple H, never mind DX, Steph was the smug billion-dollar princess who never got her comeuppance. Hiding DX, Steph was the flanked by WWE.
Look at Triple H, bruh.
WWE champion and husband Triple H, never mind DX, Steph was the smug billion-dollar princess who never got her comeuppance, hiding behind her cronies when things went awry. Stephanie still defended the title though, engaging in a long feud with Lita. The Rock soon got involved and routinely rock-bottomed Steph to the cheers of the fans and the tears of the Triple H. Holding the title for several months, Steph finally lost the belt to Lita on Raw in August 2000, that pesky Rock once again proving the difference maker. Yes, Steph's reign produced no 5-star classics, but as a legitimate main event heel, Stephanie arguably made the title the most visible it had ever been on WWE TV at that point. So hats off to you, Steph, but please stay away from the modern WWE women's title scene. Number 16, Chyna. After years of tearing it up in the men's division, Chyna said, "I'm tired of slapping around the lads, I'm going after the women's title." The former Intercontinental Champion had done pretty much all there was to do in the men's division, and despite being in WWE for nearly 4 years, had never fought for the women's title. After posing for Playboy, Chyna fell afoul of the sanctimonious right to censor, who included women's champion Ivory in their ranks. The RTC were fuming about Chyna getting nude for Hugh Hefner and co, and made the former DX bodyguard's life a living hell. Chyna eventually took on Ivory for the title at Royal Rumble 2001, but kayfabe injured her neck in a pretty tasteless storyline move. The ninth wonder of the world came back for revenge at WrestleMania X7 and promptly squashed Ivory like a loaf in a shopping bag, taking the title for the first and only time in her career. A successful defense against Lita occurred at Judgment Day, and then Chyna was gone. Quietly written off of TV while still the champ, it would be 6 months until Chyna would leave the WWE, vacating the title as a result. Number 15, Melina. One of the M's in M&M, Melina started life in WWE as a manager with a very short skirt and a penchant for the splits, but soon became a fierce competitor in her own right. After nearly 2 years on the main roster, Melina received a major push and entered into a feud with Mickie James for the title. The two had great chemistry together, with Melina pinning James for the belt on Raw in February 2007. The two continued to feud, with Melina retaining in the first ever Women's Falls Count Anywhere match in WWE history. Melina would go on to lose the title to Mickie James in a triple threat match including Victoria at a live event in France, but demanded an instant rematch as she had not been pinned.
Is there a video on the craziest feuds in WWE? Let me know.
For the title, quelle surprise, she won it back straight away. Kind of a pointless title switch, really. Melina's third run with the gold came at Royal Rumble 2009 when she defeated Beth Phoenix. Drafted to SmackDown, the title became exclusive to the blue brand, and Melina held the championship for 154 days before losing to Michelle McCool at the Bash. Number 14, Rockin' Robin. Rockin' Robin is one of the more often forgotten women's champions. While WWE rightfully celebrates the work of early champs like Wendy Richter, Robin's sole 500-plus day reign is barely ever mentioned. The sister of wrestlers Sam Houston and Jake the Snake Roberts, Rockin' Robin was signed up to WWE's women's division in 1987, remaining with the company until the division was quietly dissolved in 1990. Whilst competing on the fabulous Moolah's team at the inaugural Survivor Series, Robin was eliminated from the match by WWE Women's Champion Sensational Sherri, and the two soon began a long feud over the belt. The perfect antidote to Sherry's over-the-top heelish ways, Robin was presented as a hard-working go-getter. Truth be told, Robin wasn't the most exciting wrestler in the world, and it was the strength of Sherry's character that helped the feud along, culminating in Robin getting the win and the title in Paris, France in October 1988. Robin would defend the title at the Royal Rumble pay-per-view against Judy Martin, and the two would battle for the championship for the majority of 1989. No WrestleMania match though, Robin instead sang the national anthem, which is a much easier payday, unless you're the DX band. Number 13, Molly Holly. Despite her popular runs with the Holly Cousins, Spike Dudley, and with the Hurricane as Mighty Molly, Molly Holly never got her hands on the women's title until she chopped her hair, dyed it brown.
Molly Holly, and the attire made it
Mighty Molly. Molly Holly never
look like a fourth member of the
never got her hands on the women's title until she chopped her hair, dyed it brown, and became a big, mean curmudgeon. Sick of the WWE divas degrading themselves and flaunting their assets, Molly became a prudish force of nature wanting to change the face of the women's division. In fairness, she should have probably skipped the wrestlers and gone straight after WWE management, to be honest. Molly feuded with Trish Stratus over the title, with the often overlooked Holly really helping Stratus grow in ring. Despite the focus shamefully shifting to that of Molly's supposedly large ass, the feud still produced some great moments, including Holly's title win at King of the Ring 2002. And Molly's second reign was even better. After defeating Gail Kim for the strap, Molly reignited her feud with Trish before moving on and successfully defending it against Lita and Ivory. But after 250 days as champ, her luck would run out. Victoria would eliminate Molly from a women's title four-way on Raw in 2004 before pinning Lita for the gold. An enraged Molly repeatedly tried to get the title back, going so far as to compete in a hair versus title showdown at WrestleMania 20. Molly lost the match and her hair. Number 12, Bull Nakano. One of the most influential and well-respected women's wrestlers in history, Bull Nakano was one of the foundation pieces of the new generation women's division. The main rival of Alundra Blaze, Nakano went straight for the WWE Women's Champion when she re-debuted with the company in 1994, having had an earlier stint with the Fed in 1986. Permanently furious and dressed like Mozart with hair like an electrocuted Paul Phoenix, Nakano was a force to be reckoned with in WWE and had the in-ring acumen to back up her unique look. Nakano's first crack at Blaze came at SummerSlam 1994 in a losing effort, but she remained a thorn in Alundra's side, eventually beating her for the title at All Japan Women's incredibly named Big Egg Wrestling Universe in Tokyo in November 1994. The event, not affiliated with the Gobbledygooker, drew in excess of 32,000 fans and further showed that women's wrestling can be a major draw if treated with due respect and presented correctly. Nakano held the title for 134 days before dropping it back to Blaze and was soon fired from WWE after being caught with an illegal substance. Regardless, Bull Nakano is more than deserving of a place in the Hall of Fame. Make it happen, Vinny. Number 11, Victoria. I'm not the lady to mess with, stated Victoria's third theme, and bloody hell was that an understatement. The two-time women's champion was a fierce and accomplished competitor, and at times an unhinged, sadistic nutcase. Victoria's first title reign came during a heated feud with Trish Stratus, with problems between the two escalating on a weekly basis. At Survivor Series 2002, Trish and Victoria absolutely battered each other in a women's title hardcore match, a blood-splattered Victoria getting the win with a snap suplex. After dropping the belt to Trish Stratus in a triple threat at WrestleMania 19, Victoria continued her vicious streak throughout the women's division, including in the first women's cage match in WWE history against Lita. But times change and people mellow out, man, and a now babyface Victoria picked up her second women's title on Raw in 2004. Victoria won the aforementioned title versus hair match against previous champ Molly Holly at Mania 20 and reigned until June when she lost the championship yet again to old foe Trish Stratus. That was her last stint with the gold, and Victoria left the company in 2009. Number 10, Michelle McCool. The first woman to hold the Divas title and the women's title, Michelle McCool was also the first undisputed women's champion when she unified the two belts in 2010. The first ever Divas champion went after women's champion Melina in the summer of 2009, winning the gold at the Bash. As champion, McCool started an alliance with Layla, and thus Lay Cool was born. Cool soon engaged in the frankly awful Piggy James storyline where they bullied Mickie James over her weight. Michelle, of course, won the first singles match between herself and Mickie because bullies prospering was clearly the moral of the story. Thankfully, Mickie did eventually beat McCool for the belt, but only held it for 2 weeks before dropping it back. Their feud continued, but when Beth Phoenix got involved, Michelle switched her attention to the Glamazon, her second reign with the title ending in an Extreme Makeover match at Extreme Rules 2010, aka a hardcore match featuring loads of beauty equipment. Great stuff. Phoenix quickly dropped the title to Layla, and because Cool were BFFs, the two co-reigned as champion. Despite what McCool achieved in the ring, there were always accusations of nepotism due to her relationship with locker room leader The Undertaker. The fact McCool unified the women's and Divas title even though she wasn't legally the women's champion lends some credence to this claim in some people's eyes, never mind when McCool came out of retirement for a one-off appearance in the first Women's Royal Rumble and absolutely cleaned house. Number 9, Ivory. Despite the Attitude Era being more famous for pushing untrained eye candy over genuine in-ring talent, Ivory was certainly one of the exceptions. A 3-time women's champion and WWE Hall of Famer, Ivory has a combined 331 days with the title in an era where, at best, title reigns usually lasted about half an hour. A veteran of Glow, yes, it was a real wrestling league, Ivory started out in WWE in 1999 and won the title from Deborah after a few months with the company. Ivory beat the likes of Tori and Luna Vachon before losing to a 76-year-old Fabulous Moolah at No Mercy. And you thought WWE's fetish for older stars was bad now? Ivory soon won the belt back but lost it to Miss Kitty in an evening gown pool match. Yes, that one. It was research. I was watching it for professional research purposes, alright? However, it was Ivory's third reign with the gold which was her greatest. As part of the right to censor, she became one of the most hated heels in the company and had some great matches with Lita, Trish Stratus and Molly Holly. The prudish Ivory and the rest of the RTC soon fell afoul of China and after kayfabe breaking her neck with a spike piledriver, continued their mission of morality. But it wasn't to last long because soon enough a positively fuming China returned and decisively flattened Ivory for the title at Mania X7. Right to Censor soon disbanded and Ivory dipped in and out of the women's title scene moving forward. Number 8, Beth Phoenix. Beth Phoenix was a one-woman wrecking crew in the women's division. After a few false dawns, the Glamazon properly announced her arrival in 2007 and went on a tear throughout the WWE. Phoenix shot up the card and won her first women's title after just 3 months on the roster, steamrolling Candice Michelle in under 5 minutes at No Mercy. Holding the title for 190 days, Phoenix only managed one pay-per-view title defense, a win over Mickie James at Armageddon 2007. Undeterred, Phoenix was still well utilized on WWE TV, competing in the first ever women's I Quit match against Melina and sort of being positioned as WWE's new Chyna. In fact, when Beth and Santino went down the Chyna and Eddie Guerrero route as the Great Glamourella, Phoenix became even more dominant on TV despite the comedic nature of the pairing. Phoenix's second title win came as part of an intergender winner-takes-all match at SummerSlam 2008, with Glamourella defeating Mickie James and Kofi Kingston for the women's and intercontinental titles. Phoenix was the straight muscle compared to Santino's slapstick buffoon, and this pairing gave the two considerable screen time and a boatload of wins. Title defenses on TV, captaining the winning Women's Survivor Series team, even winning a prestigious Slammy, Beth's 2008 was fantastic. By 2012, with 3 women's titles and a Divas title to her name, Phoenix quit WWE, annoyed at the company's new direction for its women's division. Returning to the Fed after 5 years, Phoenix was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2017 and continues to work as a commentator and occasional wrestler. Number 7, Sensational Sherri. While best known to many as one of the greatest managers in wrestling history, Sensational Sherri's in-ring accomplishments are equally as legendary. A 3-time AWA Women's Champion, Sherri upped sticks and signed with WWE in 1987, defeating the Fabulous Moolah for the belt on her debut. As Moolah was phasing down her in-ring career, Sherri was positioned as the de facto heel-in-chief of the women's division, winning matches by any means necessary and unafraid to fight referees and authorities. authority figures. Sherry was a captain in the first ever Women's Survivor Series match in 1987, her team losing to Moolah's. Sherry then engaged in a feud with Rockin' Robin for the majority of 1988, with the veteran champion helping the Green Robin improve by leaps and bounds. Sherry reigned as champion and even pulled double duty under a bad blonde wig as Peggy Sue, girlfriend of Intercontinental Champion the Honky Tonk Man. After Sherry dropped the title to Rockin' Robin in October 1988, she transitioned from
Are we in top 5?
In-ring competitor to full-time manager, reaching new heights as the terrifyingly bonkers Queen Sherry alongside Macho King Randy Savage. Sherry did have the odd match here or there, memorably losing to Dusty Rhodes and Sweet Sapphire at WrestleMania 6, but she would never again be involved in the women's title division. Inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2006, Sherry will always be remembered as one of the all-time greats. Number 6, Mickie James. The obsessive stalker angle has been done to death in WWE, but in the hands of Mickie James, it became absolute gold. Starting as Trish Stratus's #1 fan, Mickie James was utterly besotted with Stratus, openly copying her moves, dressing like her, and even attempting to snog her on several occasions. When Trish rebuffed Mickie for the 4,000th time, Mickie snapped, and the two had their iconic match for the women's title at WrestleMania 22. Mickie won the match with some suggestive maneuvers, and surprisingly to everyone, massively pissed off Vince McMahon, who was sat in gorilla position. A controversial title win, yes, but it made Mickie James a star and set her up as one of the cornerstones of WWE's women's division for the next 5 years. Mickie would have 5 runs with the women's title and carved out a reputation as one of the best female wrestlers in WWE. Her second title win and ongoing feud with Lita in 2006 was particularly great, with the two having many fantastic matches, culminating with Lita's retirement at Survivor Series. Yes, there were a few missteps along the way, the non-reign in France and the Mickie James angle being 2, but Mickie always remained popular with the fans before leaving in 2010, another victim of WWE's new direction for the women's division. WWE eventually learned from their mistakes and invited Mickie James
What was the new vision
back to the company in 2016, where she had a brilliant match with Asuka at NXT TakeOver Toronto, with Mickie more.
Like there was a decent amount of women's wrestlers that left during that time because of change of ideas.
More than proving that she was still one of the best out there. Number 5, Lita. In an era dominated by underwear matches and feuds over Playboy covers, Lita stuck out like a sore.
I'm glad that's over. That type of era is over, because I want to watch people fight each other. I don't want to watch that shit.
Thumb in the best possible way.
That's why I turn on. If I were to turn on wrestling, right, I would expect people wrestling, not that.
As part of Team Extreme with the Hardys, Lita became one of the most popular stars in the entire company, her new metal image and penchant for moonsaults and mixing it up with the guys helping her gain legions of fans. During this Team Extreme run, Lita soon ended up feuding with women's champ Stephanie McMahon Helmsley, beating Steph for the gold on an episode of Raw. A fighting champ, Lita truly stayed extreme, famously having a hardcore match with Jacqueline for the title, but dropped the belt to Ivory after 72 days thanks to interference from Edge and Christian, the naughty little rascals. After further work with the Hardys, time off to rehab a broken neck, and whatever the hell that Kane angle was all about, Lita was once again in the women's title picture, feuding with Trish Stratus. The two were arguably the most popular and well-rounded wrestlers in the division, and their feud was fantastic, highlighted by Lita's historic title win in the Raw main event in December 2004, the second time the WWE flagship show was headlined by a women's championship match. For all her
Again, if you guys have a video of somebody made a video of the best feuds.
Popularity though, Lita's reigns were not particularly long, her 4 runs with the belt clocking in at 160 days. But Lita didn't need a Bruno Sammartino length reign as women's champ to cement her legacy, as she would have inspired an entire generation of women's wrestlers regardless of whether she reigned for 1 day or 1,000. Number 4, Wendy Richter. A 2-time WWE Women's Champion, Wendy Richter was one of the centerpieces of the rock and wrestling era, battling the fabulous Moolah with the help of 80s pop legend Cyndi Lauper. Moolah. Lauper's tenure with the WWE turned millions of eyes onto the product, with Richter positioned as one of its biggest stars. At the Brawl to End It All, Richter defeated Moolah for the women's title, the match broadcast around the world on MTV, becoming the most watched show in MTV history. What's even more mind-blowing is that this was the only match televised.
Was this WWF at the time?
On a card which also featured Hulk Hogan and Antonio Inoki. Richter would lose the belt to Leilani Kai after 220 days, but would win it back at the biggest event in WWE history, WrestleMania. It is no hyperbole to call Richter the female Hulk Hogan of this era. She was constantly pictured and positioned as the face of the company alongside the Hulkster, and was a main character in the 1980s Hulk Hogan rock and wrestling cartoon. But politics soon got in the way. Money became an issue, and Richter felt like she was being undervalued by Vince McMahon. At an impasse, contract negotiations broke down, but Richter was still champion. Richter was scheduled to defend the title against the Spider Lady, but WWE pulled the original screwjob and Richter was cheated out of the title legit by the referee and the Spider Lady, Fabulous Moolah, in a mask. Richter left the arena still in her gear and was never seen on WWE television again.
I knew I heard of her name. I was gonna say she sounds familiar. Now I
only returning to be inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2010. Number 3, Alundra Blaze. By 1993, WWE's new generation was in full swing, the company going in a completely new direction as a result of the steroid scandal. Vince McMahon decided now was the best time to reintroduce the women's title to the WWE and positioned Alundra Blaze the best time to reintroduce the women's title to the WWE and positioned Alundra Blaze as the featured player of the division. Debuting in late 93, Blaze soon...
Why is it with women's titles, they always have to put like pink or purple or some shit on that?
Became women's champion, holding it for over 340 days before losing it to Bull Nakano. The two feuded for the championship for months, battling across America and Japan for the gold. The classic story of the all-American girl next door battling a nigh unstoppable foreign menace, the Blaze Nakano rivalry is viewed by many fans as one of the defining feuds of the new generation. With Nakano out the way, Blaze collided with Bertha Faye, with Faye kayfabe breaking Blaze's nose in the process. The two traded the title in 1995, but with money troubles piling up for WWE, they made the decision to end the women's division for a second time. Blaze was stripped of the title, but with the physical belt in her possession, jumped ship to WCW. Eric Bischoff convinced Blaze to bring the title to Nitro, where the rechristened Medusa binned the belt on her first night in the company. This move was arguably the most public bridge burning in wrestling history, and one of the parting shots of the Monday Night Wars. Vince was absolutely purple with rage, and blackballed Blaze from WWE for 20 years, before welcoming her back into the fold for a Hall of Fame induction in 2015. Number 2, the Fabulous Moolah. The Fabulous Moolah is one of the...
Imagine he didn't induct her in the Hall of Fame. That's 20 years of pent-up anger.
Most important and most controversial women's wrestlers of all time. A veteran with over 50 years of in-ring experience, Moolah was one of the biggest women's wrestling stars for decades and trained scores of future Hall of Famers. Defecting from the NWA to WWE in 1984, Moolah brought the NWA Women's title with her, a belt she had held.
Is this a controversial pick? Being the second best women's champion?
For over 28 years. Yes, 28 years. Some of you watching this haven't been alive for as long as Moolah held that title. So synonymous was Moolah with that championship that the actual belt had a picture of her bloody face on it. But apparently holding a belt for that long can go to your head, and Moolah's backstage politicking makes Hulk Hogan at his worst seem like the nicest fella on the planet. Allegations of blackmailing, extortion, embezzlement, and even sexual trafficking from other wrestlers were uncovered after Moolah's death in 2007, but even when she was alive, some of her machinations were open secrets. The previously mentioned Spider Lady screwjob by Moolah on Wendy Richter is indicative of Moolah's ruthless manner, and led to Richter not speaking to her former trainer for the rest of her life, and is a black mark on the women's title lineage. But from a purely objective perspective, you can't undermine Moolah's importance to women's wrestling. wrestling. Like I said before, she had a 28-year reign as women's champion and was a prominent figure in the Attitude Era, defeating Ivory for the title for a final 1-week run at No Mercy 1999. Number 1, Trish Stratus. A record-breaking 7-time women's champion, Trish Stratus is one of the most important women's wrestlers in WWE history. Signed during an era focusing on TNT, managing a team called TNA, and proudly showing off her TNA, Stratus was a former fitness model brought into the Attitude Era as a valet. But Trish wouldn't stay a valet for very long and soon started feuding with Lita. The two would battle on and off for the best part of 6 years, their rivalry redefining both their careers, highlighted by their Raw main event in 2004 and their fantastic title match at Unforgiven 2006. Despite a lack of in-ring knowledge when she debuted,
Is this one of the more iconic feuds? Lita and Trish Stratus?
Trish worked her backside off and improved by leaps and bounds, shaking off her eye candy reputation to be regarded as one of the best of her generation. It didn't matter whether she worked as a face or a heel, Stratus as champion was always guaranteed to deliver. We saw hardcore matches with the likes of Jazz and Victoria, and the star-making feud with Mickie James during Trish's 6 years on top, as well as a quick spell as WWE Hardcore Champion. Trish won her final women's title by beating longtime rival Lita in front of a hometown Toronto crowd at Unforgiven 06, getting the win with the sharpshooter as is Canadian tradition. Stratus would retire as champion and was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2013. An inspiration to countless wrestlers the world over, Trish is rightly regarded as one of the all-time greats and is without a doubt the greatest WWE Women's Champion ever.
Alright. That was a very long video, I'm gonna say, but I did enjoy it. I didn't talk much. Usually when I don't talk much, I enjoy the video. So yeah, if you guys did enjoy this video, please go like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.